my loves, and welcome back to the Ages of Chaos. It's been a long, long time since I did one of these. I've got a lot to do as well. I know that there's the Chaos Space Marines Codex from 10th edition. That's coming up because that's a doozy. Ooh, it's such a good book. It's such a good book. They've been on the up and up, the Chaos Space Marines, since 8th edition, and getting better and better as time has gone on, and I think the 10th edition book might be the best they've been for quite a while. Quite a long while. Multiple editions of the game. It's really good. But we'll talk about that a little later because, well, you might, if you've been paying attention to what's going on, Games Workshop wise, Warhammer 40,000 wise, you might have noticed a little something that's been going down, a little thing that we've discussed once or twice. You may have brought it up on the Fluff and Hammer once or twice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Emperor's Children. Ha ha! Yes, the Champions of Slaanesh box set went up for pre-order last week. Or was it last week or was it the week before? I don't know. Whatever it was, I got it. I got a copy of it and it's arrived. And oh my God, the Emperor's Children range, the new Emperor's Children range. I've been waiting for this since I was like 8 years old. I've been collecting Chaos since then, since second edition. And there has never been a dedicated Emperor's Children release. The closest we got was in Warhammer 40,000 3.5, Chaos Space Marines, Codex Chaos Space Marines 3.5. Or was it? Yeah, it was. Was it Chaos Space Marines or was it just Codex Chaos back then? I don't know. But we actually got there was a thing called the Book of Slaanesh. As in the back of that book, there were like appendix army lists in that book, one for each of the legions, and then one for each of the Chaos Gods and their cult legion. That's about as close as we got. And there were some models released for that. There was a wonderful sort of Noise Marine Emperor's Children Lord that had a Doom Siren. There was a kind of Emperor's Children box set, but it was a bit shit and undedicated, to be honest. It was just the normal Chaos Space Marine box with some very, very frugal metal add-ons to turn a couple of them into Noise Marines. Wasn't that great, I'll be perfectly honest. Since then, de nada. Nothing. Noise Marines are one of the few cult units that have never had a dedicated box set, never had a dedicated kit. There were like a couple of them in the that weird like interstice between Rogue Trader and Warhammer 40,000 second edition where everything was getting updated. They had like an entry in White Dwarf, and there were a couple of miniatures, but not many, and all of them were metal. There were three miniatures, metal miniatures released for second edition. So making like a unit of them was difficult enough, making an army near impossible. And since then, there was the 3.5 update kit, kit, which was nah, and then nothing for so many editions, nothing. Silence from the Noise Marines, nothing about Fulgrim. Fulgrim was in the background. Oh, he's occurred in the background a couple of times, as have the Emperor's Children. But there's been nothing. And it really wasn't until the end of 7th edition when you got the real shocker, the real surprise of Magnus the Red coming back. Not only the first Demon Primarch in the game, but the first Primarch full stop. Before that, the very notion of there being any kind of Primarch, let alone a demon one, in the actual game in miniature form, was kind of like, ah, crazy talk, crazy talk. But since then, since the end of 7th edition, there have been rumblings of the Emperor's Children. There have been rumors floating around. As if you listen to the Flufferhammer, which has been around since the end of 7th edition Warhammer 40,000, which was God knows how many years ago, there's barely an episode where we don't discuss some rumors that were floating around the sphere. People had seen the Fulgrim miniature. Oh, they'd seen the new Noise Marines or whatever. And of course, we've had successive releases since then. We've had the Death Guard, which is a beautiful, range, by the way. Probably my second favorite of the cult legions. I don't know. They're kind of like equal tier for me with the Thousand Sons. The Emperor's Children are at the top, by the way, and they always will be, and they always have been. But you had a little more recently at the end of ninth edition, we had the World Eaters. Great to see them come back. Great to see Angron. Great to see a dedicated army for the World Eaters. Very interesting as well. I like the World Eaters quite a lot. But they're the only cult legion I've never collected an army for. I've never had a World Eaters army. Um, so we've been waiting. We've been waiting and we've been waiting and we've been waiting. And we kind of knew when the Chaos Space Marine Codex hit in 10th edition, we kind of knew that the Emperor's Children were coming, not only because they said it was happening on the Warhammer community site, but also they're not in the book. They're not, there's no like get you by little detachment or army list or anything, or any entry for things like Noise Marines or Lucius the Eternal or whatever in the main Chaos Space Marine book. So that was kind of confirmation. And of course, they're here at last. I haven't been this giddy and heady with anticipation for a release in Warhammer 40,000 probably ever, if I'm perfectly honest. This is Christmas to the nth degree. I am so fittingly enough ecstatic about this release. And I'm having gotten a hold of the box with loads of the new miniatures in and the book. I've got the limited edition book that's got that wonderful Slanesh Chaos Space Marine by, I think it's by Adrian Smith, I believe, that artwork. The really sort of like body horror one that looks like a Cenobite. It's just absolutely wonderful. And this, I am so impressed. I mean, there's a lot of concern when an army that you really like gets any kind of new release, let alone a first release. This is arguably the Emperor's Children's first real dedicated release. Let's be honest. And yeah, there was as much concern an apprehension as there was anticipation, of course, but I tell you what, this is it may just be my bias showing through because I love Slanesh, I love the Emperor's Children, but this book is great. This is one of my favorite Chaos books they've ever done. And bearing in mind, been reading them since second edition, since the second edition Codex. I love this. I love what they've done, as with all the codices, because now they've got space to do it. By the way, on a tangent, I'm so glad they've gone this route with Chaos. I'm so glad that they've separated out. They've gone the AOS route, the Age of Sigmar route. They've separated out the cult legions from the main body of the Chaos Space Marines because that's the only way to do them properly. When they're all sort of budged together in the main Chaos Space Marine Codex, they never really worked properly, let's be honest. They never had like the flair or the flavor or the dynamism that they were meant to have. They just felt like very minor, very haphazard and lukewarm adaptations of the main army list. Separating them all out, giving them their own books, their own miniatures ranges, their own place on the battlefield, their own battlefield dynamic just makes them so much more interesting. And the thing about the cult legions is they're all really extreme. They're all very difficult to play, which I kind of like. Some people moan about that. I kind of like it. Their extremity is what makes them interesting. That's what makes them fun. That's what makes them strange and slightly tricky to work with, but it is a load of fun. And one of the fears with the Emperor's Children, of course, is what are they going to be? Where are they going to go? You've already got your sort of like long range firepower cult legion with the Thousand Sons. You've got your close combat maniacs with the World Eaters. You've got your sort of stoic grind them down army with the Death Guard. Where are the Emperor's Children gonna fit battlefield wise? How are they going to be distinct? And I tell you what, they've done a great job. It's very surprising actually. They've thought long and hard about this. How are they going to play that makes them different from their cousins, from the other Space Marines and the other Chaos Space Marines and the other Cult Legions. And what they've done is they've made them a completely unique experiment. Nothing plays like these guys. Nothing functions like these guys in the entirety of Warhammer 40,000. And I would say in the history of Warhammer 40,000. Ostensibly, they are a power armor army, so they are a Space Marine army. But their dynamic, the way they play, reminds me, and this is very fitting given Slanesh's history, reminds me a bit more of the Drukhari and the Eldari, the Elder armies. They are very quick. I mean, they are very quick. Everything in this army is really fast. The slowest thing in the entire army is Terminators, and that makes sense. And besides which, Terminators can deep strike, so it doesn't fucking matter, does it? But everything is really, really fast. Most of your base units have a move range of 7 inches, which is really good. They are very maneuverable. That's where everything comes into play. It's the movement phase. It's the movement and command phases that are key for these guys. It's how you maneuver things and get them working in tandem. Ostensibly, they're a little bit like the World Eaters, but not quite as myopic as they are. With the World Eaters, you need to throw caution to the wind. I can't stand cautionary World Eaters players. I can't stand it. You're not meant to play them like that. They're not made to play like that. World Eaters, you chuck at the enemy. You charge. You get as far forward as you can, as early as you can. You set up those charges and you mince the enemy in close combat. These guys, it is ostensibly a close combat army. It's what it's for, but it doesn't have the raw mincing power. I should rephrase that given the nature of the Emperor's Children, but hey, they don't have the raw close combat power of the World Eaters. You're gonna have to make sure that all your units line up correctly, that they're charging the right things, that they're firing at the right things, and everything's working in tandem. They're absolutely brilliant. I am so, so pleased with the way they work. They're quick. They are very strategic in the sense that you can deploy and then redeploy very, very quickly. You can move out of locked situations because of their army rule, which we'll discuss later. Which, by the way, even with the caveats that apply to it, there are a couple of restrictions. One of the best army wide rules in the game, bar none. It's just so useful. It's a utility rule, which is always bloody good. It's about movement and redeploying and not getting bogged down. Oh, always bloody good. I love it. I love it. But before we do that, the background. I love this. I'm quite surprised actually. They've gone deep and they've gone dark. The World Eaters and the Death Guard are pretty horrific by their natures, but even they've got some sort of like minor sense of humor going on underneath. These guys do not. They've gone full bore Clive Barkerian Cenobite with these guys. They are immortal reavers who are obsessed with sensation and their own obsessions. They don't care about anything. Dynamically, they've made them. This is one of the other things I love. They've made the cult legions rhyme with one another. So you've got like the Antipodean chaos gods, right? You've got Khorne and Slanesh on one axis, and you've got Nurgle and Tzeentch on another. These guys, the Emperor's Children, are the dynamic opposites, but also the parallels of the World Eaters. So the World Eaters are unlike the Thousand Sons and the Death Guard, both of which still have centralized authority and some degree of organization. If Magnus sends out the call, most of the Thousand Sons, even like the exiled ones and the ones that don't really get on with him, answer. The same is true of Mortarion. Mortarion has centralized authority on the Plague Planet. If he sends out the call, the Death Guard answer. Even Typhus, who doesn't really like him very much. Even Ahriman answers Magnus, even though they don't get on very well. The World Eaters are shattered. They were broken at Scalathrax, which was, by the way, a fight against the Emperor's children post heresy, and they've never been able to reorganize as a legion because of their innate natures. Right? There's no way of doing it. Angron can't do it because he's not interested in doing it. He's just an elemental force of destruction. He doesn't care anymore, and he isn't capable anyway. Han can't do it because he's not lucid enough half the time, and again doesn't particularly care to do it. He's only interested in reaving skulls and blood for the blood god. The Emperor's children are the same. They don't have centralized authority. Fulgrim doesn't give a fig, by the way. Fulgrim's really interesting. He is the most self-composed of the traitor Primarchs, and also the most self-obsessed. He doesn't care about yoking his sons to some structure of command. That is antithetical to everything that informs him. The book talks about how Fulgrim, most of the time, isn't even in the material universe. He's either in the warp, in the realm of chaos, seeking out his own pleasures and his own sensations and new states of extremity, or he's even in other realities and other dimensions that don't exist in either, where Slaanesh holds sway, seeking out new sensations and new states and new pleasures. When he arrives in the material universe, many of the Emperor's children are drawn to him. They flock to him because they worship him as a kind of demigod of pleasure. They believe he is divine, and they bask in his presence. They bask in the glow of him. But he doesn't really care. He's interested. He sees his sons as toys, really, as things for his amusement. He doesn't hate them. He doesn't hate them at all, and he likes seeing how they perform. He likes seeing like how they're pursuing their obsessions and their pleasures, but he's not interested in them. And the Emperor's children don't have any grand design. They're not interested in, for example, vengeance against the Imperium. The ones that are tend to be drawn into the Black Legion. They tend to be drawn into Abaddon's shadow. But the Emperor's children themselves, they see that as picayune and as myopic and as a bit boring, to be honest. They are all, every single Emperor's Children warband is consumed by its own obsessions, its own desires, its own addictions, and its own ideology. Each one is its own peculiar form of Slaanesh worship, and the book goes into detail explaining what those are. They can be like particular forms of self-scarification that they seek out, or particular forms of pain, or even particular forms of death. They have like death cults where they're seeking out the most extreme or weird and exotic form of death imaginable. It's crazy. It is absolutely bonkers. And they constantly reconstitute themselves, like reorganize their own anatomies via twisted surgery and occult rites to better feel certain sensations. So the vast, vast majority of them are, they're just the most mutilated, monstrous things. But they consider that that's their aesthetic. They consider that to be beautiful. There are descriptions in the book of the various different narcotics and drugs that they have synthesized, and they are not just chemical. Because they operate in the warp and with reference to chaos, these narcotics are synthesized from things like the dying screams of Catan and the neural the screams of pain from a shattered Eldari soul stone. Some of them are made from the neural webbing of aliens that are surgically implanted into their brains. It is so extreme. The horror in this book is so extreme. It is as bad. It's as near the knuckle as Slaanesh has ever been, as a Slaanesh army has ever been, and it's really good. It's a great read, and it's everything I kind of want from the Emperor's Children. I've got to say, I am really pleased. I am really pleased with the way it's come out. I love the fact that they're shattered. Each warband is its own little experiment. I love the fact that Fulgrim doesn't care. He's not. I mean, it's to him, none of it matters because he is consumed by his own pleasures. He's the only one of the demon Primarchs who's having a good time, and when I say a good time, I mean he is just beatific. He is beyond description with pleasure. Not what we would call pleasure, but like what the Cenobites would call pleasure, you know? He's not, he just doesn't care. He just does not care. And that is really interesting. He's the opposite of Angron. He's the opposite of Angron, whereas Angron has lost all of his ego, all of his sense of self, and is now just a puppet of the blood god, just a manifestation of the blood god's aspects. Fulgrim is not. He is entirely himself, but to the nth degree, to the most extreme degree. And he just follows his whims and his humors and his inspirations wherever he wants to go. They have emphasized and exaggerated things like the noise marines in a really interesting way. In the literature, in the Black Library literature, the noise marines have always been very interesting because they're slightly apart from the main legion. They're not like the cult units of the other Chaos Space Marine legions, like the Plague Marines for the Death Guard, for example. The Plague Marines for the Death Guard are the core of that legion. It is primarily populated by Plague Marines, in the same way the Thousand Sons are primarily populated by Rubricae, or the World Eaters by the Khorne Berserkers. That's not the case with the Emperor's Children. They are organized differently. The Noise Marines are quite rare, and they are a subcult. They operate apart from the main legion and apart from the armies of which to which they belong. They are seeking this state of sublime experience, which is essentially they're trying to recreate the birthing cry of Slaanesh, that perfect music of the spheres, which heralded the death of the Eldari people, the birth of Slaanesh, and the creation of the Eye of Terror. That's one of the many things that they're trying to do. But they're almost like they're spiritual at this point. They are almost like the priests, the high priests of the Emperor's Children. And we've got new troop units, which I am so pleased about. Tormentors and Infractors, who are like the line troops of the Emperor's Children, and both of which emphasize their own extremes and their own addictions and their own very peculiar forms of Slaanesh worship, in the same way that all of the different new characters do. Like, for example, the Lords Cacophonist, who are the Noise Marine Lords, and they're very interesting. They are very interesting indeed. You've got characters like the flawless, not the flawless blades. They are another unit which we'll discuss at some point. The Lords Exultant, who are kind of like the Chaos Lord equivalents in the Emperor's Children, and their whole shtick is that everything is artistry to them. The battlefield warfare is artistry. They go out of their ways to concoct elaborate theaters of war where they are anticipating and preempting the enemy in the way that an artist, like a maestro, would conduct their orchestra. That's what the whole thing is about, and their bodies have been reworked and gifted and mutilated to such a degree that they can do things like they can sense, they can smell what their enemies are thinking or what they're doing or what they're planning, and it's so brilliant. It's so brilliant. Yeah, everything is extreme in this book. Like the language is really florid and purple and like over the top, and I kind of love it. It works so well for the Emperor's Children. On top of that, we've got all the new units as well. We've got the Flawless Blades, which I really like. I'm looking forward to trying them on the battlefield actually, because they've got a very particular place in this army. People haven't figured out how to use them yet because they're not like the meat grinder unit. They're very much not, for example, the equivalents of the 8-bound from World Eaters, although people are going to be tempted to use them that way. That's not what they're for. That is not what they're for. They're going to work very well when they are deployed correctly and with a bit of finesse, but that's not what they're for. They have, and we'll talk about it when we get to their data sheet, but they have a very particular set of abilities. In background terms, they're kind of like Again, there are different aspects of the extremes and the obsessions that are all part and parcel of Slanesh worship. For these guys, it's all ego. It's all about proving themselves to be the very best that there is. They're basically, Lucius the Eternal is effectively their homeboy. He is their messiah. They are all about proving themselves to be not only to be the best, but to be the most artistic, to be the most inspired, to be the most elaborate swordsman on the battlefield. They're not possessed. They're not like the Eightbound or possessed Chaos Space Marines. They have demonic patrons who watch them from the warp and they perform for them. Anytime they enter into battle, into combat, they are performing for their demonic patrons and they have to please them. And if they do, their bodies are just infused with demonic power and gifts from their patrons. If they displease them, then they get punished. It's really kind of wonderful. And the other thing that every single entry in this book talks about is the myriad drugs and narcotics that each individual unit uses to enhance their pleasures, to enhance their states of euphoria. And they're dark. I mean, it's really, really grim and dark and unpleasant. And I gotta love it. I gotta say, I kind of love it. Kind of love it. Much more depth on sonic weaponry now, how it works, why it works, what it uses as ammunition. Yeah, how interesting, right? Sonic weaponry has ammunition now, and it's essentially cult in nature. It's what I was talking about before. They've managed to somehow synthesize things like the last cries of entire populations or species that they've managed to wipe out, or the death cries of demons as they're banished into the warp, and it's that that forms the fuel, if you like, for the sonic weaponry. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. They still play it like instruments. They still play them like instruments, but there's a lot more detail on how they work, what they do, what their effect is. It's kind of wonderful, I've got to say. Oh, wow. I am ecstatic. I mean, there are a few things that people are not going to like. There's a lot. It's a very small army list. They've really, one of the things I kind of like myself is that they've refined it right down. There are very few units that have been borrowed from from the main Codex Chaos Space Marines. You've got your Terminators, you've got your Land Raiders, you've got your one of the demon engines. Which one is it? Oh no, two. The Helldrake and the Mauler Fiend, and obviously the Rhino. But that's it. That's it. Everything else is unique to the Emperor's Children. And it seems to me the reason they've done that is to make the army very distinct, to make it so that it's its own thing. I imagine going forwards in, not terribly long to come, there are going to be unique demon engines, not only for these guys, but for all the cult legions, in the same way there is for the Death Guard. I think what they're looking at is moving these guys away from being adjuncts to the main Chaos Space Marine armies. They want them to perform in their own ways, and I'm here for that. I'm really here for that. I think it works. I think it really works very, very well. Even those units that have been brought, like sort of borrowed over, brought over, have a sort of Slaneshi feel to them. So the vehicles like the Land Raiders and the Rhinos, their machine spirits are corrupted and rewired so that they feel pleasure too. They experience pleasure as they're mowing down the enemy, as they're grinding towards them. It's very cool. It's very, very cool indeed. I like it a lot. The other thing this book does, which I love, it's a throwback actually. It's a return to how Chaos armies should have been, how it should have always been, in that you can take demons. There is a detachment in this book, and I'm going to talk about each of the detachments in a separate video, by the way, because they're each very interesting. There's a lot to talk about in each of them. So there'll be a series of videos after this one talking about each of the detachments and how they work. But there is a detachment called the Carnival of Excess, which not only allows you to take Slaneshi demons, it also means that the Emperor's Children units and the Slaneshi demon units feed into one another. They empower one another in very particular ways, and I loves it. I loves it so much. That it's not only just including demons in your Chaos Space Marine army. They interact. There's synchronicity now. There's synergy, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It's a Demonkin army. It's a proper Demonkin army, and it's what we've been waiting for. My guess is each of the cult codices that comes after this will follow suit. There will be a detachment in each of them that allows you to take Nurgle demons for your Death Guard, Zeech demons for your Thousand Sons, and Khorne demons for your World Eaters. And it's it's so good. I've got to say I love it. I love it to bits. That detachment, we'll get to it when we get to it, but I do believe that detachment's going to be doing work. I think people are going to be really using it because it's very, very nice indeed. As for the army list itself, it's small. It's really small, but it's refined. It really pushes the Emperor's Children to work in very particular ways, and people are still figuring it out. They're still figuring out like quite how it works, and because it's new, it's completely new. Not only is the army new, but the way it works is so unique. There's never really been anything like it. So that the main army rule is called Thrill Seekers. So th- basically, if your army faction is Emperor's Children, this unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it advanced or fell back. But there are restrictions. The unit that fell back cannot target a unit it was within engagement range of at the start of the turn, and it cannot target a unit that was the target of another unit's charge or attack this phase. Okay? That is a lot better than it sounds. The ability to fall back out of a combat that you don't want to be caught in means that these guys are never, ever, ever going to be bogged down. They are never going to be bogged down. They're so maneuverable. The enemy cannot throw units at them and expect them to get bogged down in combat with them. You're always going to be able to move away. The ability, the fact that you can't then fire or charge the unit that you fell back from makes a lot of sense because it would be too powerful. It would be just ridiculous if you could do that with the entire army. It just would not work. It just would not work. And they need to be nerfed basically. But it opens up all of these very, very interesting tactical ploys where you're going to want to be thinking with this is what differentiates them from the World Eaters. You're going to want to be thinking how your units work in synergy and sort of staggering your charges and your shooting as you're making your way towards the enemy. And that it's so interesting. It makes them very fun to play. They're a thinker's army, these guys. They're a bit like the Thousand Sons in that regard. You've got to think about how they work and what you're doing with them, and that makes them an enormous amount of fun. I'm yet to sit down and play a game with them myself, but I am really looking forward to it. As for the data sheets, we've got obviously at the very head of the army, we've got Fulgrim, one of the demon primarchs, really the first official demon primarch we've seen in 10th ed outside of the indices. And he's a blender. He's really interesting, actually. I've noticed people playing him quite badly on the interwebs because people haven't figured out how he worked yet. They're playing him like they play the other demon primarchs, and that's just not going to work. He's faster than the other demon primarchs. He's more maneuverable than the other demon primarchs, and he's an absolute blender. If you chuck him at something, he's going to just massacre it. He's really, really nasty in close combat. However, what he doesn't do, and again, this fits so, so well. Unlike all of the other Primarchs, Fulgrim is not a force multiplier. Okay? All of the other Primarch models have Primarch special rules which affect the units around them, buff them in certain ways, or if they're an enemy, debuff them. Fulgrim doesn't do that. All of his buffs are for himself because that makes enormous sense. He's the ultimate ego. The other thing that's really interesting about Fulgrim, and which dynamically changes him completely from the other demon, from all the other Primarchs, is you activate your choice of his Primarch ability. There are three of them, and you have to pick one each turn. But you activate it in your opponent's command phase, not your own. That's really interesting. That's really, really interesting because it changes how you work with Fulgrim. He's a cruise missile. You don't dither with him. You don't hold him back and sort of put him around your other units because they're going to need the buffs from him because he doesn't give them any buffs. That's not what he's for. He's there to murder the most dangerous thing on the battlefield, and he probably will because he's nasty. Almost all of his attacks have sustained, almost all of them, and there are ways of buffing the roll as well with certain detachments and whatnot, so that he gets sustained hits on a 5 plus sometimes, as opposed to a 6 plus. And given the amount of attacks he can chuck out, he's going to be getting quite a few. He is rather unpleasant. His other ability, which is really interesting, is demonic poisons. So the other thing Fulgrim can do, and it's a really interesting ability, anything he hits in the shooting phase or the fight phase, and this is any unit he hits, by the way, with shooting attacks or with close combat attacks, are poisoned. And what that means is for the rest of the battle, bear that in mind, not for a turn, for the rest of the battle, any unit he has hit with those attacks takes has the chance to take die 3 mortal wounds at the beginning of each player's command phase. That's pretty goddamn good. You can have Fulgrim dart around the battlefield tagging enemy units, just tagging them. Doesn't need to do terrible amounts of damage to them, but he probably will, just to get the poisons to go off because they're poisoned for the rest of the battle, and all he has to do is hit. He doesn't have to do anything else. He only has to hit them, and that's it. They are poisoned for the rest of the battle. It's nasty. That's a really, really, really nasty ability. Yeah, he is not a force multiplier. You just chuck him at the enemy and you let him do his thing. You let him do his thing. Let him massacre whatever the hell else he touches. He is a true monster, and there's very little else in the game that can stand up to him in close combat. Some of the other Demon Primarchs might be able to do it, but he outperforms the likes of Mortarion. Angron, yeah, he could go toe to toe with Angron pretty well. And even with Magnus's psychic powers will cause a problem for Fulgrim. In fact, Magnus might be a problem for Fulgrim full stop just because of the way he works. But by and large, Fulgrim is a real beast. He's a really nasty piece of work, but requires considered use, like everything in the Emperor's Children army. He's not an auto take. This is the other thing. Unlike the other Primarchs, he's not an auto take, and that's a good thing, by the way. They shouldn't be. The Primarchs shouldn't be present in every single goddamn game. They shouldn't be essential force multipliers like Magnus is for the Thousand Sons. Hopefully they'll fix that in the Codex, like Mortarion often is for the Death Guard, like Angron certainly is for the World Eaters. Fulgrim isn't that. You've got to think about whether he's got a place in the army that you're using. And if he does, he's going to do the business every single time. But if he doesn't, think about it. Think about whether you want to take him or not. Lucius the Eternal. God. Competing for my favorite miniature in the game, by the way, at the moment. The new Lucius is mwah. He's a Cenobite. He looks like a science fiction Cenobite. And talk about a glow up. Oh my god. He's a chaos assassin. That's what he is. He's a chaos assassin. He has so many attacks. He's so quick, and almost anything in one-on-one combat with him is gonna die. Almost anything. You can chuck him against. I mean, the exceptions are things like the Demon Primarchs and like really massive war engines, but even them, he's gonna do some damage to them. He's really durable. He's got a 2+ save, 4+ invulnerable save, a 5+ feel no pain, and if he's not part of a unit, he's got lone operative as well, so the enemy can't like snipe him off of the battlefield. He's a monster. He's an absolute monster. And if he's not part of a unit, he can join Flawless Blades, which is very good, by the way. He's good in a unit of Flawless Blades. But if he's not part of a unit, then he gains fights first. So anything he touches is going to die. Anything he touches. He also carries the Layer Blade now, which is the blade that originally possessed Fulgrim, and that's a really nasty piece of work. And he's also got the Lash of Torment, which has got 10 attacks and sustained hits. Bonkers. I mean, yeah, he's a nasty, nasty piece of work. One-on-one, probably one of the strongest close combat characters in the game. Yeah, Khan, sadly, Khan as he currently is, maybe they'll give him a glow up, but Khan as he currently is doesn't stand a chance against him. Typhus, maybe? Maybe. Uh, mm, Abaddon will struggle against this guy, quite frankly. Even Marnius Calgar will struggle against this guy one-on-one. He's a cool take. And he's not an auto-include, but I'd take him in most of my armies, I've got to say. You've got your Lord Exultant, which is kind of your Chaos Lord equivalent. He's your leader, and he can be attached to your infractors or your tormentors, and you want him to be. You really want him to be because the synergy is amazing. The synergy is absolutely amazing. Whatever unit he's attached to, he gains their abilities. Like for example, if he's attached to infractors, he gains their scouts ability, and if he's attached to tormentors, he gains their infiltrate ability. So these guys are just going to be. They can just hairline across the battlefield, just rove across the battlefield really quickly, and they give some really good abilities. They give their units lethal hits. That's really good. Oh my god, that's really good actually. I never noticed, but it's all weapons, including long range weapons. So in a Tormentor's unit, that's really good. Holy fuck, that's good. Yeesh. They've also got like a once per battle ability called Euphoric Strikes, and basically for that phase they gain +3 attacks in melee, and they improve their armor penetration by 1, which is really nice. Yeah. Again, it's all about synergy. It's all about synergy. Love it to bits. You've got your Lord Cacophonist, who you can attach to either Terminators or to Noise Marines, and that's kind of interesting. He's a big old beefy boy, this one. Big model, and he's got like really heavy armor as well. And he's your Noise Marine Lord. He's your Noise Marine Lord. I'd attach him primarily to Noise Marines. You can put him in a Terminator unit, and he gives them sustained. He gives them sustained hits at long range, which is real. Oh, on Noise Marines is bloody brilliant. On Noise Marines, it's like arguably essential. It's really good. And you can equip him with dual screamer pistols as well, which is really nice. You're going to want to do that, by the way. You are absolutely going to want to do that. And he's also got a classic bit of war gear for Noise Marines, the Doom Siren. Remember that? And basically, it's a bit of war gear now. So any infantry unit that is hit by his unit's long range attacks, they have the chance of taking mortal wounds, basically, which is really rather lovely. And also, they must take a battle shock test, which synergizes really well with Noise Marines because they inflict -1 to morale, to leadership. Really good. Sorcerers, we've got our sorcerers here, and again, they're a unit where you use them in synergy with other things. Basically, they're there to provide a little bit of buffing to the units that they're part of. So they've got a psychic power called warped interference, which basically means that the units they're part of gain the benefits of cover. Really good on things like infractors. Really good on infractors and tormentors, actually. So you're gonna want to really think about what you want. Do you want a sorcerer for that extra bit of protection, or do you want the Lord Exultant for that little bit of lethality? There's a consideration to be made there. I rather like that. Rather like that. This is interesting. You've got your two forms of demon princes that you have in every Chaos army, the winged one and the normal one. Most of the time, people don't bother with them at the moment. They've never really had that brilliant data sheets, let's be honest. But the Demon Prince of Slaanesh, the one on foot, really bloody good. Really bloody good. It has a 10-inch move, so it moves like lightning. It's really quick for such a big monster. But where it really shines is in its abilities. It has an ability called Lord of Excess, which basically means while it's within range, like 3 inches of other Slaanesh infantry units, it gains lone operative. That's huge. That's huge. That means that it can't be targeted like most monsters of its size can and just blown off the board. It's very, very nice. And it also has buffing abilities for units surrounding it. It has an excessive vigor aura. So basically, if an Emperor's Children unit made a charge this turn, you can improve the armor penetration of melee weapons by one. It's really good. It's really, really, really good. The one with wings is different. The emphasis is different, and I love this. They've made the Demon Prince on foot and the Demon Prince with wings different from one another. So you have to think about whether you want them or not. You have to actually think about what will work best in my army. The one with wings is more of a missile. It's quicker. It's not as tough as the one on foot. It has one less toughness, but it's really quick. It can fly, it can deep strike, and it has a really interesting defensive ability, stimulated by pain, which basically means you can subtract one from the damage characteristic of attacks made against it, which gives it again that little bit more survivability. They are much more interesting in the Emperor's Children than they are in most of the other Chaos armies at the moment, and I can definitely see why you'd take either one of them. Either one of them. My personal favorite is the one on foot, simply because of the buffs that it gives. Very nice indeed. One of the new units, which I really like, the Flawless Blades. These guys they're kind of the equivalent of your Possesseds and your Exalted 8-bound, but you don't want to be using them like that. They're quick, 8 inches move, they're tough, toughness 5, a 3 plus save, 5 plus invulnerable save, 3 wounds each, so they're tough, but you don't want to be using them in the same way. If you use them like 8-bound, then they're not going to do the business. Um, they each have 3 attacks base, but they're weapon skill 2, so they're pretty much always going to hit. Strength 6, armor piercing -3, damage 2. Very, very nasty. Where they come into their own is their demonic patron's ability. So they can choose to call upon their demonic patrons in melee. And if they do, every time they make an attack, an unmodified wound roll of 3 plus is a critical wound. That is really good. I can't even tell you how good that is. Because that basically means that they're automatically wounding things on a 3 plus. So these things are going to be able to really do damage to really big, nasty units. Things like your demon primarchs, your greater demons, your war engines, etc. If they don't kill any models, then one model in this unit is destroyed because their demonic patrons are not happy. But given what they can do and the way you can buff them as well with certain buffs from detachments that give them things like sustain, yeah, they're going to be doing the business. You've just got to think about how to use them. They're not quite like the meat grinders that Exalted 8-bound are or anything like that. They require more considered use. You can also chuck Lucius into them and just make them a meat grinder unit if you want to. Here's another interesting one, Slaanesh Chaos Spawn. Always take them. I mean, if there's an auto include in the army, it's really weird. I've just got a cup of tea, by the way. Hang on. Mm. Ah, it's really weird, but the Chaos Spawn in Emperor's Children armies are auto takes. They're fantastic. They're quick, they're tough, they're durable. They move 10 inches. Bearing in mind, they can actually charge in and then leave combat. So they're great disruption units. They've got a Feel No Pain 5 plus. Once per turn, they've got an ability called Scuttling Horrors. Once per turn, when an enemy unit ends a normal advance or fallback move within 9 inches of this unit can make a normal move of up to 6 inches. They're really good. They're good for doing things like doing actions. They can do that now. They can hold objectives, which is really, really good. Yeah, they're excellent actually. You're going to want 1 or 2 units of these guys at least. I'm really quite surprised. Spawn have a big place in this army. They have a really big place. Some of my absolute favorite units from the entire book. The battle line units, your baseline troops, your tormentors. Your tormentors are kind of your equivalent of your legionaries in a normal Chaos Space Marine army, but they're much more focused on one particular thing, and they have loads of different abilities. So your tormentors are basically your long range troops. They are equipped with bolt guns, just normal bolt guns, and a large number of them can take melter guns and plasma guns. So for every 5, you can take a plasma gun, and for every 5, you can take a melter gun. So essentially, in a 10-man unit, you can take 2 plasma guns and 2 melter guns, which is really good. However, what makes them distinct, barring the fact that they have the Thrill Seeker special rule, is that all of their long range weapons have precision. All of them, including the melter weapons. That means they can target characters inside a unit. They can target specific models inside a unit. There's no like hiding your little character inside of a unit from these guys. They can target them specifically. It's really good. On top of that, they have infiltrators. Yeah, a baseline battle line unit with precision that has infiltrators. That's really good. You stick a Lord Exultant in there that gives them lethal hits as well. Oh, bonkers. And on top of that, Objective Defiled. It's sticky objectives. They corrupt objectives, which is it's amazing. They can go around taking objectives and then move on to do something else. It's on top of that. They have a magic icon, the icon of excess. Basically, at the end of your shooting phase or fight phase, if they destroyed an enemy unit, they can roll a die 6, and on a 4 plus, you get a command point. The utility of these guys is unlike anything else in a Chaos Space Marine army. They are fan bloody tastic. If you really want to see an unbalanced but weird but really effective army, all tormentors and lords of excess with maybe a couple of noise marine units supporting them. Really, really interesting. Very, very bizarre, but it kind of works. Maybe a couple of chaos spawn, for screening and for distraction and subterfuge. Yeah, really interesting. They've also got an equivalent, which are the infractors, and they are kind of the same, but they're the close combat variant. So they all have dueling sabers, all close combat weapons, which just as start as chainswords effectively. But just like the tormentors, their close combat weapons have precision, so they act like assassins. They can target all of their attacks against a character in a unit or a particular model in a unit. It's so interesting. It's such an interesting way of making them distinct. And rather than having infiltrate, they have a scout move. So that means at the beginning of the game, after the armies have deployed, but before any turns are taken, these guys can scout 6 inches. It's really good. It's really, really good. They also have a special rule, excessive assault. Each time a model in this unit targets an enemy unit with a melee attack, re-roll a wound roll of 1. Already really good. If that enemy unit is within range of an objective marker, you can re-roll the wound regardless of what number it is. Really, really good. They are a very plucky, very useful little combat unit. Again, stick a Lord Exultant in there, give them all lethal hits, and watch them do the business. We've got our Chaos Terminators, which are your standard Chaos Terminators, as in the Chaos Space Marine Codex. However, they obviously have the Thrill Seeker special rule, which is really, really nice. And they also have Lethal Obsession. So this basically means that if you shoot an enemy unit with these guys, and all of their weapons target the same unit, you can re-roll the charge roll if you then charge that unit. So these guys are very specific in the way they work. They're Terminators, so they're just good anyway. They're just like, they're bricks. They will just do the business, whatever you get them to do. But if you focus them on a particular enemy unit, if you want something very particularly dead, that's what these guys are for. Interestingly, they're a lot rarer in Emperor's Children and a lot smaller. You can only take units of 5. None of those big blocks of 10 with these guys, which is really interesting. Really interesting. Again, you've got to play to their strengths. Hmm. You've got to think about how they work, what they're for. But yes, you can do some really nasty work with these guys, and they work very well in very particular detachments. I've got your Chaos Land Raider, it's exactly the same as the Land Raider in the other books. Has its assault ramp, which is really good in this particular army. The Land Raider is really, really good. You're definitely going to want one if you're taking Flawless Blades, because it has the assault ramp, which means that they can move in, they can disembark and charge from it, which is amazing. And then the Land Raider can actually support them with its long range firepower. Also, the Land Raider provides some of the sort of tank and armor busting which the army is otherwise lacking in. That's one of the weaknesses, the innate weaknesses of this army, by the way. And I couldn't be happier. I actually couldn't be happier. That's how they're meant to work. That's one of their inbuilt weaknesses. Just like all of the cult legions have their inbuilt weaknesses. The Death Guard are really goddamn slow and difficult to maneuver. The Thousand Sons rely very heavily on their psychic powers. The World Eaters are largely just assault based. The lack of armor busting is one of the weaknesses of this army. And it works. It really works. You've got to think about what you're doing when you're fighting an army that has a lot of armor. Things like Astra Militaria, for example, certain Space Marine builds, Votan, etc., can be very tricky. Can be very tricky with these guys. Noise Marines. Noise Marines. Love what they've done with them in this army list. Love what they've done with them. They are not the battle line unit for this army. They fulfill the role of Havocs primarily, and they are, I would say, essential to the way the army works. You are going to want to take at least 2 units of these guys. I would take 3, and I'd stick them in rhinos for reasons that will become apparent later. But Noise Marines, they're bigger than normal Chaos Space Marines. They're tougher like Havocs are, so they're toughness 5, which is really good. And they have awesome amounts of firepower. And I mean absolutely amazing rates of firepower. They're very short range. That's the other thing. They are maximum 18 inches. And that means they're going to want to get pretty goddamn close to the enemy. So once again, you're going to have to think about how they work in tandem with certain other units that can support and protect them. There's a lot of synchronicity and synergy going on here. But when they do get within range, they're going to do the business. They're all of the sonic weaponry's had a glow up. It all ignores cover. It's really good. They also, I mean, they have their terrifying crescendo rule, which basically means that if an enemy unit like is battle shocked, then their leadership is it's at -1 leadership. It's an okay rule. It works very well in tandem with certain other rules in the army. You know, in certain other detachments. Stick a Lord Cacophonist amongst them, and they get sustained. That is nasty. If I took a Noise Marine unit, which I will be doing, then I'm going to stick a Lord Cacophonist in them because it's awesome. It's just a brilliant synergy. Mm, cup of tea, by the way. The Helldrake is a bit different in this book. It's had a glow up. It's got more wounds for some reason. It's a bit tougher. It's got a bit more damage. It's a bit nastier in this book. And it's actually quite nice. It's a nice sort of, not only is it a nice distraction unit, it's kind of one of those units that a lot of armies don't have an answer for, which makes it, it makes it interesting. You're going to have to think about how you use it in an Emperor's Children army, definitely, but definitely as something to sort of draw attention, to present a threat on a different flank of the enemy whilst you're coming up another side of the battlefield. Yeah, it's quite nice. I can actually see taking a Helldrake in this army, which is not necessarily something you can be said for some other Chaos Space Marine armies. We've got the Mauler Fiend, which is pretty much the same as it is in the Chaos Space Marines, except it has a glutton for punishment rule. So when this guy takes wounds, if he is below starting strength, every time he makes an attack, then you add 1 to the hit roll. If he's below half strength, you add 1 to the wound roll as well. So he gets stronger as his damage is going down, which is kind of cool. Again, in Emperor's Children army lists, they have a lot more to do. They're a lot more useful in many respects in an Emperor's Children army list because again they're a source of armor busting and they're a big old distraction unit. They're nasty big monsters. They're really goddamn quick. And the ability to use the Thrill Seekers army rule means that they're going to be able to pick and choose their targets. Very, very, very nice indeed. The Chaos Rhino. The humble little rhino. Essential in this army. Really useful. I'm actually really shocked. The rhino in The Emperor's Children is really goddamn good. It's really goddamn good. You stick Noise Marines in there. It's got the firing deck, so you can shoot your 2 Blast Masters out of the top, which is amazing, by the way. They become basically firing platforms in that instance. But it also has the Assault Vehicle special rule. Units can disembark from this transport after it has advanced. Units that do so count as having made a normal move that phase and cannot declare a charge in the same turn but can otherwise act normally. That's really good. Again, for firing units like your Tormentors and your Noise Marines, it's amazing. And there is actually a detachment, a really weird, interesting detachment later on that emphasizes that. And I will be discussing that a little later. Then we move on to our demons. And the demons have all had slight changes. They're not quite as strong as they are in the main demon index, I don't think. But they've all had certain differences to make them more workable in this army list. So we've got Shalaxi Hellbane, who's still a complete monster. Not quite as much as she used to be, but quite frankly, thanks Slanesh for that, because she was a silly unit at one time. She was an auto take in a demon army, and it would have been silly to have her as an auto take in an Emperor's Children army as well. She's a beast. If you chuck her at something, it is going to die, and die quickly. She is a character killer. She's a character killer. She's an assassin. Whatever individual model you want dead, you chuck her at it. Especially if you take her as part of the Carnival of Excess, because, quite frankly, she's amazing in that. She's really, really, really special. Keeper of Secrets, yeah, really, really, really nasty big monster with multiple wounds, incredibly quick, quite defensive as well. I mean, it's not quite as tough as some of the other greater demons, but it's tough enough. And again, almost anything you chuck it at, it's going to die. It's going to die horribly. It also buffs nearby Legions of Excess units, so Slaneshi demons. It improves their armor penetration of their melee weapons by 1, which is really good. Demonettes, you're going to want one around to buff your demonettes. Speaking of which, I love the demonettes in this. I really, really love them. They're fragile as all hell. They are very easy to kill because they're Slanesh demons. They're kind of diaphanous, but they're quick and they're going to kill almost anything they get in combat with because they've got fights first. And all of their melee attacks have devastating wounds. So most of what you throw them at is going to die, especially if they're buffed by being in the Carnival of Excess and nearby Emperor's Children units. Love them. Absolutely love them. They work very, very well in tandem with the Emperor's Children units. That's the other thing I like, by the way. They've really thought about how the demons fit into this army and how they work synergistically with everything else. Fiends are amazing. Again, if you're taking that Carnival of Excess, you're going to want at least one unit of Fiends. Fast, tough, very, very nasty in melee. And I mean, like, woof, very nasty. They've got a combined profile for their barbed tail and dissecting claws. Devastating wounds again, so any hit rolls of 6 is going to cause some real damage. 5 attacks, strength 5, damage. Yeah, they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. They're going to kill most things. And we've also got Seekers as well, which is really nice. Demonettes riding steeds. They are blazingly quick. I mean, like, quicker than most other units in the entire game, especially with their deep strike and scouts. They're going to be able to get anywhere, and they're going to be able to attack almost anything or occupy objectives or harass flanks or something like that. They're really good. They are really good. Again, you're going to want to think about how all of these things work together, how the Emperor's Children units act in synergy with the demons and how they can support one another. But when you figure that out, this is a really, really cool army. It's so interesting the way it works. It's so maneuverable. I I absolutely love it. I'll be honest. I am giddy with excitement over this at the moment. I'm just loving everything about the book, the style of the book, the new miniatures, the way the army works. I'm very pleased. I think Games Workshop they've pulled a blinder with this one. I think they've realized that this was a really anticipated release, that people have been after this for so long. And by and large, I think they've hit the nail on the head. I think they've got it really, really, really right. I love the book. I love the miniatures range. I love the aesthetics and the background. Can't wait to get them on the battlefield. When we come back, my loves, we're going to go through each of the detachments and we're going to have a look at how they work and what how best to structure them and what their ethos is, how they're meant to play. Until then, my loves, I mean, I cannot wait for you guys to get a hold of this and to start figuring out how it works and start playing with it because yeah, it's brilliant. I am so pleased with this release. I can't even tell you. Ecstatic, fittingly ecstatic.